This is the Torbay Early Years Transition Commitment Training presented to you by Judith Thomas and Katie Mackle.
The Early Years Transition document came about through partnership working. An event was attended by practitioners from across all services in Torbay. We had 0 to 19 Torbay, Action for Children, the Educational Psychology Department was represented, Portage Home Visiting, as well as our schools and settings from within the Bay. During this meeting, everyone contributed their views of what a good transition looked like for all children in each half term across the academic year. We appreciate transition and induction can occur at any time rather than purely at the end of term or academic year. The Working Party, with representatives from each of the aforementioned partners, was then formed, and they met regularly to create the document we wish to share here. Our commitment for early years transition, highlighting inclusion for all, highlights the values and beliefs that the Working Party collectively wanted for children, families and settings. So in the purple box we have children are seen and known, their voices are heard regarding their needs and wants and their preferences in terms of likes and dislikes. For families, we wanted them to feel informed, empowered and valued, and that they are prepared for the change ahead. With settings, we wish them to be confident and supported, which will underpin and enable strong working partnerships. Below the three main boxes are our expectations in terms of transition. These pull together our beliefs and values. In terms of communication, it was expected that it's open and honest, effective, timely and impactful. Under relationships and personal connection, we felt it was important everyone's voice is valued, contributing to a nurturing, trusting relationship between the family, child and the settings. Partnerships are vital, everyone coming together to collectively share knowledge and expertise. The fourth box is child-centered, where every child will be heard with their individual needs and strengths being the focus. And finally, and most importantly, inclusive, a fully accessible, welcoming environment that is adaptable and individualized. How the document works. As you can see, across the top of this page are the 6 half terms across the academic year. The document itself has 6 sections, 3 focusing on universal and 3 focusing on targeted. Within the universal sections, they focus on children, families and settings. And then again, this is repeated for the 3 sections that relate to targeted support, children, families and settings. The sections are color-coded to help. So sections with children as a focus are pink. The sections with families as a focus are blue. And the sections with settings as a focus are green. As you can see here on the first section for children, which focuses on universal support, both induction and transition are highlighted. This pattern is also repeated across the other 5 sections, with each detailing prompts to enable smooth induction and transition processes. Some statements run across the year, indicating they are ongoing. Some statements sit on specific terms in the year to act as a reminder. The orange statements all contain information around good practice. For example, on each page is a nudge regarding attendance and settling in routines. So leaving the pink children's section, we move on to here is the first section for families, which is blue, as you can see, and here it features universal support for induction and transition, focusing on what families need. These statements are more specific to the timeline. For example, there's visits to prospective schools in autumn 1 and 2. Applications for school admissions need to be completed within autumn 2 and spring 1. Ideally, 15th of January is usually the closing date. And then the school place allocations day being the 16th of April in this year, which falls in summer 1. So they're much more time specific for families in this box. In the final boxes for summer 2, there's a prompt about attending parents' meetings and also some support regarding buying uniforms. Again, the orange ongoing statements linked to attendance and good habits which can start in the early years. And there is also some signposting in terms of the family hub who offer support around eating and sleeping, and also if families may need to access early help. The third section in the universal support, it relates to settings, and they're always color-coded green. So here it shows ongoing support in terms of induction meetings, which could happen at any time, depending on when a child joins the setting. The time invested in induction meetings with the family, or whether it's a home visit, depending on your setting's approach, can lay the foundations of a strong parent-setting partnership, which underpin positive relationships and support children to thrive. The prompt in autumn 2 and spring 1 relates to reminding parents to apply for a school place, as hinted at on the previous page, and summer 1 suggests implementing aspects of your practice which may help children prepare for their transition to school, e.g. it may be having some school uniform in your dress-up area, other practices that you may regularly use during that term. Transition meetings and visits may be also held during the summer term.
I'm going to take you through the targeted timeline. So just as a reminder, the pink are children, green are families, and blue are settings. And we also have some orange strips going across the academic year, which are ongoing activities. So in this slide, we'll first look at the children's timeline for targeted children. For each slide, we'll look at induction first, followed by transition across the academic year. So at this point, of course, children can start at any time during the year. So we need to ensure that children have the opportunity to attend their full funded hours entitlement to support them to establish a secure routine. Arrange an induction meeting for children with known needs so that information is shared and the support is in place before the child starts. TAF meetings might already be happening. Continue with these throughout the year and put in place one-page profiles. In the transitions, ensure plans of support are in place at the beginning of the summer term. Start liaising with colleagues at the new setting to arrange meetings and visits. And of course, at the bottom in the orange strips, you have access to all the resources you need in the Family Hub, as well as a link to the early help process. We're now moving on to this slide, which looks at families. Ensure that families are informed about their child's funded hours entitlement and that they're encouraged to access this. At any point of the year, support families to access targeted support throughout the family hubs. Families can expect to work in partnership with setting practitioners, sharing concerns about their child and being part of creating plans of support as part of the graduated approach cycle or PEP system. Families will be invited to create one-page profiles of their children to support early years setting staff with their provision planning. I'm now going to flip on to slide 9. So now we're looking at targeted support for families at transition. So at transition, at the beginning of the autumn, parents will take the lead to visit schools of their choice to help them with completing school applications. In the second half of the autumn term, parents and carers will be applying for a school place as usual using the Torbay admissions system. By the beginning of the summer term, parents and carers will be informing early years settings of their school place allocated for their children and in partnership preparing information to be shared with the receiving school for their children. By the beginning of the summer term, parents and carers will be attending arranged transition meetings at their children's new settings, involving multi-professionals as appropriate and sharing information, including one-page profiles about their children with needs. There are templates for transition documents, including an enhanced transition document. So now you can see that it's green and we're moving on to settings role for supporting targeted children in induction to begin with. So at any point in the year, early years practitioners should arrange a team around the family meeting or individual learning and development plan meeting for a child with known needs that registers at the setting and in order to put in place plans of support. The graduated approach should be in place for children identified as needing targeted support. ILDPs and reviews of these children should take place on a regular half-termly basis. In autumn 2, ensure to support parents and carers with school applications for targeted children and give guidance to those parents and carers who choose to delay their children's entry by discussing this option at TAF meetings together. Should parents and carers wish to go ahead with this, direct them to the guidance found on the Family Hub. So continuing, we're going to look at support for targeted children and their transition. And the focus is what the settings will be doing. So for parents and carers who would like a specialist provision for their children, early years practitioners must refer children to the educational psychology services by autumn half term. Support parents with what to consider and ask about when visiting schools. Support parents and carers to apply for a school place at the usual time between November and January. Identify children needing an enhanced transition into school at this point. Discuss this as a plan during your ILDP meetings with parents and carers. For those few children needing a high level of support, in order to make the 20-week time frame, Requests for an education, health and care plan must be made by spring half term. The second half of the spring term, at ILDP review meetings, early years practitioners should be starting to work in partnership with parents and carers, making a plan about transition into a new setting, sharing the transition forms and the one-page profile templates. At the beginning of the summer term, early years practitioners will be establishing contact with the receiving school, making plans to share information about the child, which may include SEND visits and meetings. Additional transition visits can be made in the second half term.
So bringing our training to a close, Judith and I felt it was important to share a model transition document which is available on our new Home Learning and Environment and Early Years website through Torbay Council. If you Google or use a provider to search for it, it'll come up, and there's lots of information held centrally there. And one of the tabs is on transition. So you'll find this, the commitment, and our two transition documents, which we're going to share now. So this is just a brief overview of the Universal Transition Form. And here it highlights details on the child, generally the setting they've attended, their allocated sessions. There's a brief section on their progress check to see if there were any concerns raised during that time. In terms of their learning, they're looking at the child's strengths and any areas for development, and then thinking about where the child currently is in their attainment regarding the 7 areas of learning on transition. On the second page, there's an overview of any vulnerabilities the child may have, and a little box that you can tick to indicate which main areas of SEND the child may have. And then importantly, in the box below, it suggests that if the child is experiencing additional needs, that the enhanced transition meeting plan is used, which Judith's going to come on to explain. And again, there's a box at the bottom to seek parental comment and support.
So moving on to share with you an enhanced transition meeting template that you can pre-prepare some sections and then complete together as you're having a meeting around the child with SEND. So in this document, as you would expect, there's a section on page 1 where you fill out the child's basic details and identify the main area of SEND. And you also have an opportunity to indicate whether they have an EHCP, or it might in fact be in draft form, and you can make note of that. In the second page, which is the middle page there on the slide, there's a little bit where you're able to record some background information about the family, when the child was an infant, and their general health. And on the third page, you're able to list the professionals involved in education, social care, and health. So moving on to page 4 of the meeting minutes, you're able to discuss and share information about the child, including a one-page profile, but information about their communication, their play preferences and motivations, their dislikes or things they might fear, their level of independence, coping with change, and their self-esteem and resilience. And importantly, what's needed so that the child has a sense of belonging. So what's the staff going to do to adapt their environment to fully include them? And it might be learning new skills or providing particular resources and so on. And in the last page, this is where you record your actions. Who's going to do what to support that transition for the child?
So we've come to the end of our presentation now, and we'd like to thank you very much for listening, and we hope to produce some more in the future. Thank you.